Hello everyone. I would like to share something in Hebrew. Um, I have been studying Hebrew for a few years, and one of the reasons why I started studying Hebrew was to get a better understanding of the Word of God. Now, I believe that God has preserved His Word, and I believe that the King James Bible is the closest English translation that we are going to have. It is, I believe that God has preserved His Word through the King James Bible. And so that being said, though, there's things that even a perfect translation that you're gonna lose in translation. And I'm gonna give you one example, and this is kind of just gonna give you an idea as to the depth that we have in Hebrew that we can't really understand in any other language. I actually believe that Hebrew was probably the first language. Now, of course, I don't believe that, like I believe Jesus died for my sins, but I believe that God created the Hebrew language, and I believe it's really super important to have a better understanding of this language because it gives a salvation story there in the Hebrew. There's just so much to unpack. Let's just look at just the very first verse of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, I disagree with this translation because it says the heaven, and of course, they actually use the plural form, so it's actually the heavens and the earth. But let's look at the Hebrew side of it. So this is Bereshit Aleph. So this is basically Genesis 1 because they actually use the first character. They use the characters instead of numbers in this case. And Bereshit means in the beginning. I'll talk about that in a second. So we have the Aleph, which is basically number 1. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashemayim ve'et ha'eretz. So there's actually 7 words. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashemayim ve'et ha'aretz. The 4th word is super important. I'm going to start there. This word right here, et, it's made of 2 characters, the aleph and the tav. The aleph is the first character, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and the tav is the last. And it kind of reminds me a lot it's very indicative to me of Revelation chapter 1 verse 8. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Jesus is of course telling John the Revelator about this, and John recorded it in Greek, and of course we translated it to Hebrew. So the Aleph, the Alpha and the Omega, this would be the equivalent of that. Aleph and Tav, Alpha and Omega, the first letter and the last letter. And of course, the Hebrew, Jesus did speak Hebrew. He spoke several different languages, but he would have known, of course, the Aleph and the Tav. I have a theory that maybe even Jesus kind of said it in Hebrew, but I can't prove that, but it's just a theory. And some people disagree with that, and that's fine. But so the Aleph and the Tav are the first and the last. Now, the Aleph right here is a lot of the characters, the consonants in Hebrew, they represent something. So like they represent a noun, and the Aleph in the ancient form of it looked more like an ox. It kind of turned on its side and kind of looked more like the face of an ox. The Tav, the original form of it, kind of looked like a cross or like a sideways X, which is like a cross. And so every character has basically a noun that it represents. And I'm going to give you another example. So this first character right here, the bet, that's the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It's supposed to look like a house. And in fact, it is the first character of the word Beit, which, if you remember, Bethlehem, Beit Lechem, Beit means house, Lechem means bread. So Bethlehem means house of bread, which is very interesting because Jesus was born in Beit Lechem, and he said, I am the bread of life. So there's a lot, that's just another example of why Hebrew is so fascinating. But this was supposed to look like a house. This lamed is supposed to look like a staff. So there's just so much to unpack in every single character. Coming back to this 4th word, et, there's actually no translation for that word et. Every other word has a translation. Breshit, so b is in, resh, reshit is head, like Rosh, we can talk about in Daniel, how we talk about the Rosh, Gog and Magog, and the Rosh, like Russia, and the head of the continent, basically the top of the continent. So head is Rosh. So in the beginning, or in the head. Bara, this is the third person masculine plural. So he created, masculine singular. He created. And who was he? He was Elohim. Elohim is actually the plural form of God. The El right here is God, but Him is the plural form of God. Now, they use the plural form of God, and I think that's very interesting. I believe in the Trinity, and I believe that this is an early indication of the plurality of God. That God is really three. He's one, but he's three in one. He's a Trinity. However, the Hebrews would say that it is really just to denote importance. And indeed, they do use the plural form of some nouns to denote importance. And this is one example. Now, I'm going to differentiate between Elohim, the plural form of God here, versus if they're talking about lower g, little gods of the pagan nations, the Gentile nations around, and specifically the Micha Mocha B'Leim Adonai, talking about the how you are great, who is like unto God, greater than all the other gods. They spell it slightly different than they would spell this spelling. So this particular spelling they only use for speaking of Jehovah God. This word et, like I said, has no translation because its function is to clarify syntax. There is no syntax or word order in Hebrew. Like we have, like in English, we'll say a noun, and then you'll have a verb, and then a subject, like somebody that's receiving, or adjectives go in front of the nouns and things like that. But in Hebrew, they don't really have that. So this right here, et, is always going to be in front of a definite receiver of action. So let me give you an example. If I was throwing a ball, then I would be throwing, if it was a ball, just any random ball, you would not need that because it wasn't a definite. But if I were to throw the ball, then I would have this in front of the definite word ball, okay? So it has to be in front of a definite noun, where there's going to be like the boy versus a boy, or it might be like David, a proper noun where it's like in front of something, actually speaking of this specific noun. And in this case, speaking of this specific noun, ha-shamayim, ha being the heavens, Shamayim being the heavens. So this et is saying that Hashemayim is the receiver of action. So God, Elohim, bara, created the heavens. And then it has v'et. So this is that another rendition of that word et, but it has the vav in front of it. This vav right here is, in this particular case, it means and it looks kind of like a nail. It's a skinny little letter right there. And then, of course, it's speaking of and the earth, haaretz. Now, so there's just two renditions of that word et, and this one has the vav in front of it, meaning and. Now, this verse right here, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, is 7 words. For word 1, word 2, word 3, word 4, word 5, word 6, and word 7. Now, if you'll remember in Peter talked about how a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. And then it talked about how in John 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. This word right here, et, the Aleph and the Tav, the Alpha and the Omega, this is Christ. It's very, to me, blatant. It screams that this is Christ. Because Christ was the sacrifice, the ox on the cross. He was the sacrifice on the cross. So to me, there's just so many reasons why this is blatantly representing Christ. And of course, there's another rendition of that word right here. I'll come back to that in a second. And of course, Peter did say that one day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is as a day. And it said that he told the end from the beginning. Well, this is the very beginning. This is the first verse of the Bible, kind of your thesis statement for the rest of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, we don't know what happened before that, but this is the beginning of the story right here. So this is a very important verse, very important way of starting out the Torah, saying God already existed and he's already happening. And what did he do? He created the heavens and the earth. They didn't exist before. He created them. Bara means created. Actually also means built. So he built the heavens. He built the earth. And of course, then the rest of the story tells you how he did it. So with the 7,000 years, you can see right here, 1, 2, 3, 4,000 years, 5, 6, and 7. So Christ came the 4,000th year, the end of the 4,000th year. There he is. And then you have, at the end, after he came to earth and died on the cross, the sacrifice on the cross, he went where? He went to heaven, Hashemayim, the heavens. And he spent the 4,000th year and the 5,000 year and the 6,000th year. He's coming back with the nail prints in his hands. V'et. And where is he going for the 7,000th year? He's coming back to Haaretz, to the earth. And he's going to rule and reign with his believers, with his church, with his bride on the earth for the 7,000th year. So when he said he told the end from the beginning, indeed he did. Christ came the 4,000th year. Then he went to heaven. He's coming back at the end of the 6,000th year. And he's coming back to rule and reign on earth for the 7,000th year. This is just one example of the depth that we have in Hebrew, that we're just, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This is accurate, 100% accurate, except for, again, I said that this should be heavens. This is 100% accurate. But there's more to that story that we don't understand in English. I hope this kind of gives you some inspiration to maybe delve in and study for Hebrew yourself, even if you just kind of start your journey. And I would like to encourage you to do that, because when we study God's word, in Timothy it says to study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. We really do need to study and hide his word in our hearts so we might not sin against God, because once you see things like this, you're going to never forget that. It makes an indelible mark on your soul, and it draws you closer to God, and see the intricacies of God and in his word, and how beautiful and how precious and how amazing he is that he preserved his word over all these thousands of years. I hope this blesses your heart. I hope you have a wonderful day.